I'm getting ready to install Cork Roadbed on the peninsula on my Jersey Highlands Railroad. I have been adjusting the track plan on this for a couple of years now, and I keep moving it around until I finally got something that seems to meet my structures that I want to put on it, plus my operational needs. And to facilitate moving the track around, let me just show you how I initially put the track down onto the plywood base. Zoom in here a little bit. And here you can see that I use tiny screws and washers to put the track down, and that way I can adjust it. By just loosening that a little bit, I can move this in and out a little bit to get a smooth curve, and I can just take them out and rearrange the track completely if I want to. So now I finally got a track plan that I like. Let me just show you these screws a minute to show you how small they are. If you get yourself a small enough screw, I think you can see that okay. They lie below the rail heads and they don't catch on the couplers. So now I'm ready to remove those and then put the Cork Roadbed down. Let me move back to where I have a transition area between where the cork is down and where the cork isn't down. Let me show you here. Okay. There we go. So here I have the cork down, and here's a transition area, a little ramp I made so that it would slowly bring the descent down to the level of the plywood. I'm going to remove this section of track a minute. There's that little ramp I made, and this piece of cork. Okay. So if we zoom in here a little bit, you can see where the Cork Roadbed is installed, and of course here's where it isn't. If you notice, these don't line up, and that I do that on purpose to give me a better, more stable joint in my Cork Roadbed. I really don't, unless I am approaching a turnout, cut those off even. I let one extend beyond the other. And that's that piece that I had in there the whole time. The couple things I want to point out here, if you look over here where I just removed that piece of track, you'll see that I have marked the center line of the track, and I do that just, I eyeball it. Let me come down here a minute and you can see it here. I just take a pencil and mark the spots in the center of the track, and that gives me a guidance to install my roadbed, the Cork Roadbed, when I want to install it. So I'm going to remove this track, and then it's just those dotted lines there that help guide me when I put down my cork. The sections of cork that I have are 3 foot in length, and they're split in half so that you see here's the one half, and the other half is going to get installed like this, and that'll give me my contoured roadbed. I think you can see that this one is much smoother than this one, and that's because I've sanded this one down. Once I install it, and I do that by simply putting some yellow glue on the back of the cork strip, put it in place, line it up with those dotted lines, and then I use T-pins that you can buy at Michael's or Joann's Fabrics or Hobby Lobby. And once the glue is on the back and you get it lined up, you just put a pin in it, hold it in place. I put some weights every so often, glue it. Besides yellow glue, some people use white glue, some people use adhesive caulk. You can use whatever you like, but I find yellow glue works fine. I let it dry overnight, and then removing the weights and so forth, I come in with a sanding block, and I want to sand both the horizontal surface, the slant surface, and most importantly the transition between the two. And the reason I want to sand that off is that later when I want to do my ballasting, I want that ballast to fall smoothly from the horizontal portion of the cork down the slant surface down to the surface of the ground around it. And it does that very nicely if you've just kind of knocked off the rough edge here with the sanding block. I also coat, as you can see here, I also coat the Cork Roadbed with a couple coats of latex paint. And I do that because I have a very humid basement, and cork is very porous. It acts like a big sponge if it's left untreated. And so, you know, in the summer when it's humid down here, the cork would absorb a lot of moisture and expand, and in the winter it would contract and it would just wreak havoc with my track. And if you put a couple coats of latex paint on it, that solves that problem. And I just use a cheap gray that I picked up. My ballast tends to be in the gray line anyway. If I was using a tanner, I would probably paint it tan. But and the main thing is to seal it. The other thing I just want to talk about a minute is the how you treat your turnouts. Let's check over here on one of those. Now you're going to want to put Cork Roadbed underneath that too, and you can build that up by cutting pieces of this in place. And then when you get to the separation here on the turnout, you have to bring this one around from the center line and the other one here, and then cut a wedge-sized piece. Or you can just go get a Midwest products, and there's a few other companies that do it, that sell it also, preformed for turnouts. And you can get right hand and left hand. And certainly I've used these. I built them in place, and I've cut my own out of sheet cork by just taking one of the Midwest products and putting it on top and then tracing it. And you have to cut with a box cutter, that slant side and so forth, but it's not very difficult at all. It's not untypical, unless you use all Midwest products cork, that the thickness of this piece for the turnouts is a little bit different than the thickness on the cork that you've bought in strips, and that's certainly the case with mine. You can see there's a slight, let's see if I can get that to focus better, a slight difference in height. And all I do there is take a sanding block and sand this back a little bit in a transition area, and that takes care of that problem. Of course, the other problem is you want to label this track very carefully as you zoom back out a little bit, as you remove the track, so you know exactly which piece goes back where. And I also have all my power drops already soldered to the track, and those are, although they're soldered on the track side, they're not soldered on the underside of the layout. So I will disconnect those, label them carefully, so that when I remove my track, the power drops come up with the track, and I reinstall them when I put that back down. So, you know, it's another one of those examples of our hobby where sometimes you have to take a step or two backwards before you can move forward again. But the end result is a nicely contoured track bed, and also a little bit of sound deadening and so forth, and you end up like I do up here on my quarry branch with nicely ballasted track and with a contoured Cork Roadbed underneath. And that's it.